Jay. Thank you, Jay. Let the people of the church rise up. What are we talking about? Let the people of the church rise up, right? Rising up in consciousness, rising up to the vibration that recognizes that God is in everyone, in everything, and that we get to lean on that faith. Amen? Amen. Because that is what it's all about. I believe that that's why we're here, that's why we're gathered, because something within us is seeking to rise up to a greater awareness of what is possible when we trust the very essence of God that is all around us, within us, and in this very sacred and holy moment. So, join me in speaking. I was going to say this affirmation. I'm going to go out of the way and just say this truth, not just an affirmation, this truth. This moment is holy. This moment, now say it like you believe it. This moment is holy. By the way, you don't even have to believe it to say it like you believe it. You will begin to believe it the more that you own what we are affirming. So this moment is holy. I am standing on sacred ground. Say that together. I am standing on sacred ground. That's what this is all about. I believe not only what I'm sharing with you today, what is within the pages of this powerful book, Ordinary Mysticism, I believe that it is what's at hand in our spiritual journey, in our journey of life, to just remember that every single moment is holy and that no matter where we're at, it is sacred ground because we make it sacred. Because we are the living expressions of the divine. And so wherever we're at is the potential for greater good, is the potential for greater love and for greater peace and everything that we know God to be. And so it is so sacred that we are being invited to just remember that and to really honor it. I love the synchronicity of things. And while, as many of you know, I am on the board of Unity World Headquarters, I do not have a sway in the daily words, and yet, did you see that daily word as we're talking about the power of recognizing the beauty of life and the sacredness of every moment? It says, what is it? Right here it is. The world becomes beautiful when I find God in it. Now, and if I could shift it a little bit, I would just say life is beautiful because God is the allness of it. Now, I know that part of our work is to become more aware of that, right? But the reality is that we're not being asked to make something that is not already what it is. There is the power, the essence of the divine in every single moment, and our invitation is to recognize it in greater ways and to recognize that we are, in fact, one of the ways in which God expresses itself and lifts the vibration and the consciousness of humanity towards a world that works for all, towards a world that brings a greater sense of peace within us and all those around us, a world that recognizes the power of our faith. Now, I love that the first line in the introduction of this great book by Mirabai Starr is, "Welcome to the temple of your life, the holy ground of your ordinary days." Welcome to the temple of your life. What would life be like if we remembered that moment by moment? Now, I'm reminded of the great mystics in the world, and some of them may be individuals that you yourself are inspired by, those saints or those monks that went out and saw the world maybe differently and invited us to see the world differently. Individuals like St. Francis of Assisi, Teresa of Avila, Meister Eckhart, Thomas Merton, Gangaji, Rumi. And I am especially remembering the wonderful mystic, Brother Lawrence. Now, how many of you remember the story of this wonderful 17th century monk, Brother Lawrence? So for those of you who may not be aware, so his teachings were actually put together in a book called Practicing the Presence of God. And he really taught that, he emphasized that God was in every moment. And even the things that we would think as mundane were an opportunity to honor that presence and to honor that divinity. And he was very famous for talking about how beautiful and sacred and holy was to wash dishes. Wash dishes, because it was an opportunity for him to be of service to others, to be of service to the divine. And let me tell you, it's such a beautiful and powerful teaching that we can find the sacredness and even the mundane, and that each of us have the opportunity to do so. Because, I don't know, but I have a feeling you get to do dishes. You get to do dishes. I feel like Oprah, right? You all get to do dishes. And we get to do dishes. My God, we get to do dishes. Imagine what it took for that water to be there. We get to do dishes. Imagine what it took to have that plate in front of you to wash. We get to do dishes. Imagine everything you had to grow through and move through, the challenges that you had to experience to be right there at that sink to wash dishes. If you put that into perspective, nothing that takes place is ordinary. It is extraordinary. And I really invite us to become more aware of that practice, to step back and to not just do because it's what we do, but to bring a greater understanding of the beauty and the miracle and the blessing of even the things that we believe to be mundane. Mirabai Starr reminds us that the mystical path is for all of us. And it is right here, right now, in our everyday moments, because it is in the ways in which we connect and relate to those moments. She says, mysticism is not distant or reserved for a few. You are already a mystic, and your ordinary life is sacred ground. And I was thinking about this word, ordinary. And the reality is that we defined it, right? And we use it, and it's just a concept. It's just a label that we have given to things. Because again, we have the opportunity to recognize that there is nothing ordinary about even the most mundane things that we do. I was having lunch with Jen and with Tom, my husband, on Friday, and we were just talking about life. I don't even know how we got into it, but I just had this question come up in me, and I was like, how many people have lived in this world? And many of you know my husband's the science nerd, so of course he was like, I believe it's 11 billion. I was like, wow, that's amazing. And I didn't believe him. And so I looked it up. 100 billion people have walked this earth. 100 billion unique individuals have walked this earth. 100 billion unique lives have been lived. There is nothing ordinary about the fact that 100 billion individuals lived unique lives and were unique expressions of the divine. It's extraordinary that we are as unique as we are, and we get to experience our life in unique and blessed ways. And can we step back and remember that even when life is getting challenging and life is getting hard, can we step back and remember the power that is within us as we move through what other people may consider ordinary, but we get a chance to call it a miracle? What would life be like if every single moment we recognize that not only was it a miracle, but our connection to it can create even greater miracles? The power of that moment is the power to wake up to the fact that God is always with us, that God is always within us, and that there are more miracles that are being birthed. Let me tell you, it's what I lean on in some of these days that we are living through, right? That the difficulties and the challenge that we may be experiencing, the grief that some of us are holding for the division that we see in the world, for the ways in which we sometimes don't feel like we can relate to each other or just even witness or see the God in other people. I lean on the truth that the very presence of God is here, and that, yes, while some people may see that we are breaking down, the reality that I know is that something is breaking through. And that is a miracle. To be able to face the world in that way is a miracle. And it is possible, because living as if everything is extraordinary is not only possible, it is the way that I believe we are meant to experience life. And I know that you have experienced it also, that things are special, because how many of you have been, well, now you're all going to say, we were doing the dishes when I had this experience, right? But no, how many of you have moved through something that just seems so mundane, right? Like driving through the streets and all of a sudden you recognize, oh, wow, the beauty of God. Or maybe it was like in those moments where like somebody cuts you off and you're screaming at, the person that's cutting you off, and then you realize, oh, wait, they just saved me from an accident. Right? Like all experiences are an opportunity to recognize that there is something greater at hand that we may not comprehend, but that we can give birth to. And I know that we are moving through some difficult labor pains, and that's what's happening. Something is being birthed. And the more that I believe we open ourselves to seeing the extraordinary and the sacredness of each and every moment, the easier it'll be to move through some of these labor pains, and the easier it is to see the vision of what truly is at hand, and that we can experience it, and that we can be part of that birthing process. Everything is special. Like that. There's that saying, like, well, if everything is special, then nothing is special. How limited that way of thinking. If everything is special, then everything is special. Period. If everything is extraordinary, everything is extraordinary. If everything is a blessing, everything is a blessing. And we get an opportunity to live into that and see how we can heal whatever we need to heal and move through whatever limitations or other ways of thinking, or thinking of like that we're not worthy of experiencing all of life as a miracle. And mysticism really invites us into that. Because mysticism, as Mirabai says, is not about concepts. It is about communion with ultimate reality. Communion with the ultimate reality. We are always connected to God. Amen? Amen. We are always one with God. Amen? Amen. And we sometimes don't remember. Not amen. Right? And the opportunity to recognize that there is an ultimate reality in everything. So the world may see things breaking down, but we can rest assured, I can rest assured, that something is being birthed. We can experience things as division and disharmony, and we can recognize that the truth and the reality of something is that we are coming together. That in order for us to heal that sense of separation, we gotta see it. Right? We gotta allow it to come up. And when we allow it to come up with a greater vision of what can be birthed through it, then it becomes a miracle in the making, and we become the ones that bless it into manifestation. Now, she also says, Mirabai Starr, that a mystic is someone who skips over intermediaries and goes straight to God. So the reality is that I didn't have to say all those things. I didn't have to say anything that I just said. Because there is a wisdom and there is a guidance that is deep within each and every one of us. And we get to be our own sages. We get to be our own mystics. And we get to be, through the understanding and the awareness of God's presence in our lives, as that which moves into the world as a blessing, and as in recognizing that in every moment there is a potential for our good. And I believe that many of us find ourselves in this very room because we were such mystics that many of us were done with being told that we needed somebody between us and God, that we needed to seek forgiveness from somebody that was holy in order for God to forgive us. We were done with the construction of religion that told us that we had to define ourselves and define our relationship with God in the ways that they wanted us to define our relationship with God. And so all of us that are here in unity, I believe, are those rebels that knew that there was a different way. And we are the rebels that recognized that there was no need for anything other than recognizing our connection with God is unique, is individual, and that is where our power lies. We find ourselves in this room because we questioned the way that things were done. Now, let me tell you, I think there's a place for that. As the father of a 13-year-old, I had to tell him some of the ways in which he had to be in the world, or support him in recognizing that. But as the father of a 13-year-old, I'm realizing that he may not need that anymore, and that he needs some more space to figure it out for himself. And I believe that's where we are as a human family, right? Where we have started to spiritually mature to the point where we don't need other people to tell us what our relationship with God is. We simply just need to live it. We simply need to step into it more boldly. And so we are growing out of old ways of being and into new ways of being. And I believe that the new way of being that is at hand for me is to just see the sacred, the holy, and even the things that don't feel good. Even the things that I wish were a different way. And mysticism, then, is not an escape from life. It's not just going out into the mountain. It's going out to the mountain for nourishment and replenishment, but coming back to the village and living our lives from that sense and that place, and to have an intimate relationship with life, because that intimate relationship is with God itself. Unfortunately, even our own ideas, as Mirabai Starr says, of what it means to be spiritual prevent us from living an engaged spiritual life. Because how many of us, even as we rebel, have some old ways of patterns of being that are still keeping us stuck with, that's not spiritual, I'm not being spiritual. Everything we do is spiritual because we are spiritual beings. Everything that we're about is about our oneness and connection with God, whether we're conscious of it or not, and our invitation is to become more conscious. And so, a couple of weeks ago, we had that Ask the Ministers service, and I was in the firing line for some of those, right? There were some really good questions. All of them were really good, and we didn't even get to all of them. And so Laura came to figure out, it was you, Laura, right, earlier today. She had one of the questions I didn't get to, and I actually answered it on a video that I still have not posted. So you're getting a little bit of an introduction to that video that we're going to put on social media. But her question was, how do I live a spiritual path? And my answer was, you are, period. Whether you label it spiritual or not, you are living a spiritual path. The question may be, how can I become more conscious of it? But everything we do is spiritual. Everything that we do is part of our journey. Everything we do is a coming back to God. And so let's take a moment to just feel into that. And then ask ourselves, how can I live more fully into that? Because if we fail to recognize that every moment is a spiritual moment and an opportunity and a connection with the divine, we're going to be living fragmented lives. We're going to be rushing through things. We're going to try to be fixing it all and being upset with ourselves when we aren't able to fully fix it. We're going to be disconnected or feel disconnected. And let me tell you, that gets tiring, right? And so this opportunity is this. So when we talk about being mystics and some of those individuals that go out into the mountains, yeah, I go on retreat, right? Because sometimes I do need that break. But I need that break because I don't stop enough during my day to remember this moment is holy, I'm on sacred ground. And so yes, we take the classes. Yes, we go to retreats. Yes, we come to Sunday services. And it's because it's part of our practice to remember the truth that is always there. This moment is holy. This is sacred ground. And whenever we remember that, that is renourishing. That is replenishing. That brings about a greater sense of what we can be about. And so when you are tired, when the grief is too much, when the challenges are too difficult, my invitation is to just take a moment and say, this moment is holy. Say it with me. This moment is holy. I am on sacred ground. I am on sacred ground. This moment is holy. I am on sacred ground. I believe that we've done a disservice to ourselves and to each other by fragmenting our lives. This is my life at Unity. This is my life at home. This is my life at work. This is politics. This is me in the neighborhood. It is all spiritual. We recently, and I'll be sharing more of it in the next couple of weeks, but we recently, the Unity movement, created a statement about some of the things that are coming up for so many people in the world and in the challenges that we are experiencing. And one of the things that we say in that is that the patterns that we see today whether we are fearful of them or not, there is a lack of trust that we have on the power of God and the power of our faith. And one of the things that we say is that this is not political, what is going on. It is a spiritual crisis. It is not political. It is a spiritual crisis. And there were some people in Unity that read that statement and got really offended and got really upset because they said, there goes Unity getting political. There is nothing political about recognizing the ways in which we are called to live out our truth. There is nothing political about recognizing the ways that we get to live into our values. There is nothing political about trying to live the gospel of Jesus and the teachings of Jesus in all the areas of our lives. And so the more that we stop segmenting our lives and recognizing it is all holy, it is all one, and it is all God, the greater we'll be able to respond to the crisis that we have, whether it's in our own life or whether in the life of humanity. Amen? Amen. And so don't let yourself be divided. Don't let yourself be segmented and fragmented, and don't let the community be an expression of that. No, we are one in God. This is part of our spiritual path, and we are the mystics. We are the mystics that are giving birth to a different way of being because we see what is truly happening. We see what is at hand, which is the rebirth of a way of connecting and knowing that we are one with the divine. That's what's going on. It's an opportunity to see God in each other. It's an opportunity to see God in how we relate to each other. And Mirabai Starr says, this is what it means to be a mystic, to show up for what is, to be present to all that is, to take refuge in the boundless intimacy of exactly what is. This is what's at hand. And whatever I labeled it, whether it was mundane or ordinary or even extraordinary, what is at hand is spiritual, is God. The love that your heart yearns for flows from the hidden spring that lies directly under your feet, precisely on your own most ravaged patch of earth. And so we bring our spiritual understanding to every single experiences. Are we going to be engaged from the place of our own spiritual nature, or are we going to be engaged from the place of our ego? And knowing that everything is sacred and the way that we can show up is our gift to that sacred moment shifts the way that we experience and we relate to whatever is going on. Now, Mirabai Starr invites us then for this couple of weeks to look at what it is that we want to do with it. You know, she talks about like, are you going to make a vow? You know, are you going to make a decision? What she says is, how about we just set the intention? And she uses a word from the Jewish tradition, which says kavana. And she explains that kavana is not just having an intention, like in Unity, for example, we would do like the treasure maps, right? Or write out our goals. It is about aligning with our heart's desires, aligning with the presence of love and where love and our heart are guiding us. It is an alignment with the heart. And I want to share with you, I had an experience with this because, right, like, as you know, I have a 13-year-old, as I mentioned, and I was bad, and I started allowing him to be on his iPad a little bit in the morning drive. It's a long drive, 35 minutes in the car, and to go to school. And I started letting him be on the iPad a little bit. But then I got into, oh gosh, he's on the iPad, and here is an opportunity for connection. And so all of a sudden, I started to like tell him, no, you can't be on the iPad. You can't be on the iPad. You can't be on the iPad. And it was a struggle. It was a fight. How many of you can relate telling a kid not to be on the iPad, right? But it was a struggle and it was a fight. And I started to realize, and by the way, every so often then I just play the daily word, to see if that, would bring some closeness to it. But I asked myself last week, I'm like, what is the intention that I have? Is it for him to be off the iPad, or is there something deeper? And what came to me is that, no, what I want is just to have that feeling of connection in the car and to have a stronger relationship with Lucas. And so guess what? I was clear about my intention, and I was clear verbalizing it to him. And I just said to him, I just want to connect with you. And I don't feel like I can connect with you when you're on the iPad. a miracle happened. He put the iPad away. At first it was just putting the iPad away, right? But during the week, it started to become more. It got to the place where yesterday we were in the car on the way back from a soccer game, and he started asking me about my day. So this is where I invite you to look at what your intention is within your relationships, within the activities of your life, to recognize and be more aligned with what the heart is seeking to experience through the ordinary ways in which we get to live our lives, so that we can have these big mystical moments. This moment is holy. I am standing on sacred ground. And because this moment is holy, I want to have a holy instance with you, Lucas. Just like I want to have a holy instance right here, right now, with each of you. The power of that awareness. I want to leave you with the full beginning of the introduction to Ordinary Mysticism. It says, "Welcome to the temple of your regular life, the garden of your days, the harbor where you catch your breath, the theater of your relationships. This is the terrain where you wake up and transform. The sometimes chaotic, the frequently fraught, unexpectedly beautiful domain of every day. You don't need to trek to a remote shrine in the Himalayas, or enroll in expensive seminars, or convert to a new religion to connect with spirits. Your life is holy ground, and you are a mystic." My invitation this week for you is to know that, to affirm it, and to live it in greater ways. Through that, transformation, the lifting up of humanity to the awareness God was with us all along. Namaste.